and thank you for inviting me to speak a bit as well. The topic that I want to talk about today is high performing anxiety. Um, and I'm not sure how much you would have heard about it at this point. If you have, you may have not. It's not really something that you're taught in med school, I feel like, having done my psych rotation this year. Um, the first question you'd probably ask is, what is it? What is high functioning anxiety? So the first thing we have to acknowledge is not actually a recognized mental health diagnosis. So it's nothing that you're going to officially get a diagnosis for. And the reason behind that, it's because although it is an anxiety that people go through, it doesn't, well, it's deemed not to sort of impede on your function, your level of function. So it doesn't impede your day-to-day function doing everyday tasks. So it's not given an official diagnosis, but it'll still be there underlying for quite a lot of people. Yeah, again, it's not recognized because it's not deemed to have a significant impairment on your function, but it can present in pretty much everybody. It's not like the stereotype where if you picture somebody with anxiety, you sort of picture like visible anxiety on the outside. We all have that stereotypical image, I'm sure, that you can sort of generate in your own mind. But this could literally be anyone, and it's normally it's in the name. It says high functioning, so it's in the name. Whereby it's people who, for instance, guys in uni, that person that you see in your cohort who's just like just seems like they're on top of everything. They're getting high marks. They're very outgoing. They're in this position. They're doing this extracurricular activity. But beneath all of that, there can be some emotion and some struggle that people are going through. So I just want to touch on how this can sort of present in people. What can you look for? So the first thing is that typically people who have this are overachievers. So by that I mean like a type A type personality. Somebody often described as like a workaholic. People who are like, you know, they have high dreams, they have high hopes, they want to work towards it. They're sort of like a perfectionist type of person, like to forward plan, value organization. And sort of when you're in that realm, it's the idea that you only really sort of ease that level of stress, ease that anxiety when you feel in complete control. And the struggle comes from trying to do more and more and more to achieve that level of control, but you're never really satisfied. So again, that's something that you'll see a lot in our population as students, as healthcare professionals, are people, you know, who are deemed to be in the more higher achieving end of society. People who have this will also suffer with a difficulty trying to say no. I'm sure that a lot of people probably experience this themselves as well, that you're asked by maybe friends, by family or other people just to do something. And even though you'll have like a ton of other stuff on your plate to get done, you'll have 3 or 4 deadlines and maybe have another commitment that you're giving somebody. You might have a social gathering or something. But then if somebody has asked you to do something and you sort of fear disappointing them, you kind of struggle with saying no. And a lot of the time, and I can relate to this point myself, you feel like that getting those tasks done, to sort of get those so something you can actually see that you've achieved, getting that done can sometimes feel more important than your own your physical and mental health, and it can take over your life. A lot of people will prioritize doing these sorts of tasks, whether they be academic or otherwise. They'll prioritize that over their social life, and you begin to suffer because of that. Your social life takes a hit, your own the whole work-life balance will take a hit because of it. And it comes from the fear of just upsetting or disappointing other people. So that is something that you'll see as well. Insomnia is another characteristic that you'll find, which is essentially just trouble sleeping, to put it simply. And I think for a lot of people who would maybe have high functioning anxiety, this could be the only presentation they have. They can have no other characteristic, no other sign, just have this insomnia. And it's just, why does it happen? It's typically because people are ruminating on what has been going on throughout the day. ruminating on the past. Oh, like for instance, oh, have I upset anybody today? Did I say X, Y, and Z in this conversation? Was it the right thing to do? Should I have done it this way? I'm sure a lot of people have had those thoughts where after something's happened, you'll then constantly think about how you could have done it differently or done that thing better. And although a bit of reflection is good, you don't want to become as obsessed by it to the extent where it does affect your sleep as well. And they are like, it is associated with depression as well. Rumination is just constantly thinking about stuff in the past, living in the past, not getting out of that. And in the same way, if you can change that rumination, change that thought process, you can also change the outcome as well. So this is a very important point that you can tackle to sort of prevent adverse events later on as well. Now, I put fake happiness down. And what I mean by this is that like people who have this type of anxiety, they'll sort of like put on a face that, oh, everything's fine. You'll be laughing, kind of putting on a show, maybe cracking cynical jokes, like trying to be that comedian, almost sort of developing a personality that's not really you, but it's something that you want other people to see as you. And you'll see that in a lot of people, it's just something to mask. It's that unwillingness almost, I guess, or just fear to even open up to people. And it is important if you do want to sort of begin to overcome this, that you're able to lower your guard and tell other people what's going on. And this doesn't have to be in the literal sense as well. Like you don't need to straight up just find somebody and talk to them. Like you can do that in many ways. Like as the system mentioned previously as well, like you can go through therapy services, you can open up, you can talk to people when you're ready, obviously. You can do it to friends, you can do it to a complete stranger if you don't want it to be somebody you know. It doesn't even have to be to a physical person. Like technology at this point makes the opportunity, like provides so many opportunities to do this. So you can do this anonymously as well online. I don't know if you guys have ever come across Brumfest. I think it's on Facebook. There's a variety of reasons people will use that, but it's also a good place to vent if you ever need to, if you want to just get something off your chest. And some people will also contribute like anonymous advice or opinions, although disclaimer, they might not always be helpful, or you just don't want to rely on it. But there are many avenues you can try to go down to sort of get those emotions out of you. Now, another thing is just picking up bad habits. And by this, I mean, we all cope with our difficulties, our stresses in different ways, right? Some of us will prefer speaking to other people. Some of us try to avoid doing that. Like we don't like telling other people, we'll instead channel that sort of energy and release it in other activities like sports, maybe in the gym or some other, any other hobby, anything that provides you some sort of relief, right? Whereas for some people whereby you're confused and you don't really see a way out, you can sort of pick up bad habits to sort of either take the attention away from it, or even as a coping mechanism, for instance, like drinking, gambling, etc. And that's something that you have to be aware. That can be a warning sign that somebody is going through something if they seem to be spiraling out of control in that sense. So that's something that if yourself you're going through that, you want to avoid, or if you see somebody else starting to pick up a few odd habits that aren't really them, or if there is something, if for instance you can have a friend that, let's say, drinks normally, like, or go social, but you've noticed them spiral away, like they're getting like sort of progressing on that sense, it's good to keep so just keep a check on it, monitor it. Another key thing is negative self-thought. So by this I mean that for a lot of people it's easy to find flaws in yourself, and I think that's a general trait in most people as well. It's easy to be self-critical and just look in yourself and find faults rather than in other people, and for some people that can be to a much greater level than normal as well. And it just comes from, again, that type of personality. You're constantly trying to strive to be better. You don't think you're quite good enough. You're in that competitive sort of mode where you're trying to be the best that you can be. And it's easy to sometimes just be overcome by that and obsess within that, and just having all these thoughts, for instance, that you can see on the diagram, just like how would people react if you told them this, like, and it's important to challenge it as well. Like if you do have those negative self-thoughts, you shouldn't let it just eat at you in a sense. It's good to challenge them and just think logically through it yourself as well. Because a lot of the time you'll have fear like, oh, if I speak to somebody, what will they think about me? Is it too trivial? Is it worth even going to somebody about it? Am I actually, because the thing is with high functioning anxiety, because you're still achieving what you set out to achieve. A lot of these people are still passing their exams, they're getting through these assignments. In the eyes of everybody else, they're doing well in their life, right? So it's like, am I really suffering with anything if I'm still, so I'm getting by, right? But that it's easy to look on the surface, but it's important to look at yourself as well, because if you overwork yourself, and although you might be achieving that level of functionality at this point, once you sort of go over the tipping point, everything comes crashing down very, very quickly as well. I'll touch on that a little bit later as well. So it's important to challenge yourself with these thoughts, and it comes like there's like different CBT exercises that you can do as well, to sort of build up this skill of thinking through it yourself rationally and challenging your thoughts. Another thing I wrote was mysterious, and I don't mean by this, I don't mean like in the cool sense or anything like, oh, that guy's so mysterious. I mean in the sense that your peers, your friends, I guess sometimes even your family, they don't really know you that well. This will happen more so in academic areas or in the workplace, right? Where anything that's task focused, you'll set out to achieve, you'll get that done. Like you're like a machine in that sense, right? You'll get that done. But once it comes to getting off the clock, and your peers, whatever, will invite you to some sort of a social situation or just something to get to know the people, like anything that you can't really plan ahead for, you'll just back out of it. Well, most people will back out of it, right? I had that thing. I sort of I guess I had that sort of mentality at one point as well. And I don't really want to. Is it something I want to do? I can be doing X, Y, Z sort of tasks instead. And oh, if I go here, what if I don't know, like, do I fit in? How's it going to be? I'm actually going to enjoy it. Like, do I want to go this now? I'd rather just take, just be on my own, just not bother. And so people won't really know much about you, and that can also contribute to why you won't want to speak to people as well, which is quite important. And bad days as well. So when you're going through like a serious bout of sort of anxiety and stuff, like, it can feel like the bad days are just never ending, in the sense that it's relentless, like day after day after day. Sometimes there'll just be that one thing, and again, if you're ruminating over stuff, like the tiniest thing can just make it feel like the whole day was terrible, and like just yeah, it was just like one of those days, like, oh, I'll just get to the next day. But if that happens repetitively, it can be easy to sort of get into a state of mind where you begin to accept it as a norm, and you just sort of accept, oh, is this my life? Is this normal? Is this sort of emotion quite normal? And it gives you, it sort of leads to an inability to relax on a daily basis, and you begin to accept it. And it's important to recognize that it is a bad day, but you did get through it. At the end of the day, you're there. At the end of the day, you're pushing through. You're starting a new day. You've gone through this before. Why is it something that you can't get through now? Like, you've just got to give yourself, like, sort of like an opposite to the negative self, or like positive. Just motivate yourself and just look at everything from a step back and look at it in the grand scheme of things as well, as it can be very easy to sort of get indulged in all your thoughts. After even one thing that could just ruin your day. Constant validation. Now, by this, I mean, a lot of people will sort of, they won't have enough confidence in themselves to sort of validate something you're going to do. So you'll be seeking approval from other people for something that either you want to do, whether it's the right thing you should do. Have you done something right? Is this good? Is this bad? Like, you're constantly looking at other people, right? Because you feel like your own opinion isn't good enough. And some people who sort of feel like, oh, am I a burden on other people? You'll sort of just suffer in silence and won't even bother asking other people, just live in that uncertainty. And I guess this is a sort of an inner struggle for everybody to sort of become comfortable with yourself and your own judgment, and try to think through yourself and go with what you think is right as well. Because at the end, everybody will have an opinion as well, and it's not necessarily right as well. It's their opinion. Obviously, if you're doing something like that everybody's really shocked about, it might just be a big warning sign that you might be going down something that's not right. But most of the time, if you do trust your own sort of thought and your own judgment, a lot of the time what you're doing is fine, and you'll learn from the experience as well. Whether that be something new, a new challenge you want to take, maybe some sort of a new job, a new volunteering a role or anything. It's important to have those experiences and don't let your insecurities hold you back. And also being afraid to disappoint others, which essentially ties into pretty much every point I've mentioned so far. It comes from this fear of failure, I guess, which comes from the high functioning sort of group that you're in. You're like, if I do drop off, what's going to happen? Because you're used to this so much that anything that sort of deviates from this will incites fear in you. And this also contributes to why you also you struggle to say no, because if you disappoint other people, you know, like it's something that you're not that open or that willing to go through. And you know, this is the last thing that I want to see. If you do disappoint somebody, I'm sure you'll recognize this meme. Yeah. So this is just to sort of summarize each of those characteristics that I just described. And something I just want to add on to that is to build on to the last point is being afraid of that uncertainty, failure, or boredom. And by boredom, I mean that being in this particular bracket, right? You're living like a cycle where you're constantly doing something, you're constantly doing some sort of a task, right? Whether that be a task to achieve something academically, or even just generally everybody's just always like on the phone, doing something. You'll be scrolling through Facebook, Twitter, what have you, right? You're always doing something, and then once that's sort of taken away from you, right, aka boredom, where you've got nothing to do, that's when the anxiety sort of builds up. And the reason behind that is that constant cycle of events that we live through, it just gives that dopamine rush in our brain. And when we sort of get rid of that, that's when we build up those emotions. And this is what I touched on earlier when I said once you go over the tipping point. So generally, like a certain level of anxiety or arousal is important because it does keep you sort of functioning, right? So if you can look just up to the first, just the peak of this curve, at a certain level, it will be peak performance. And this is the reason why a lot of people are afraid to sort of let go of their anxiety, because they feel like it's the only thing that really keeps them at a high performance or high level of function. Because it's easy to sort of think that, oh, I've been like this my whole life. So if I let this go, will I still be achieving what I've been achieving? Or is this just a part of me? It's easy to sort of believe that it's just a part of you. This is who I am. I'm just this person, but it also contributes to why I'm doing so well in these areas, right? But if you don't get a sort of like a grasp of it and sort of try to work on it soon, sometimes it goes over that tipping point where you start going on to the second half of that curve, where you just get distracted and you just can't focus to the extent where your performance just plummets to the complete other end. And this is something that we sort of have to recognize and acknowledge. And it's important, even if you are at the moment functioning to a very high level, it doesn't mean later on you could go, it could become a bit too much. So you might ask the question, well, why is he telling me this? Like, what's knowing this going to do for me? Well, at the moment, I assume that most people who are watching this are going to be either students or somebody who's going to be working in healthcare. So either working as a healthcare professional now, will be in the future, or some sort of student at university or school or whatever, right? And you're going to be going through like a lot of stress at this point. You're used to those long nights, that sort of level of hard work. And you're going to be in that bracket of high achieving. And especially if you're a healthcare professional or a healthcare student, the medical school, the university, they would have picked you in the interview stage because you show those characteristics of wanting to help other people, right? So almost putting other people before yourself, putting others' needs before yours, right? And that becomes a habit, and it's easy to become engrossed in that to an extent. But you know, you can sort of let go of yourself and forget about self-care as well. So it just begs the question, so at what cost? Like you need to sort of recognize that the way that you're going to then benefit other people or do what you keep doing is also bettering yourself. So if it is that mindset that you sort of struggle to let go of, then just think of it in the sense that how are you going to help other people if you can't? help yourself in the first place, there's going to come a point where both are just going to get completely effective. So it's important to recognize that. And it is this population that sort of does seem to be slipping through the cracks, I feel, because you are in the high achieving bracket. You seem to be, you know, from some perspective, you seem to be like doing completely fine, doing well in your life. So it's easy to overlook some of the struggles that you're going through. And especially now that we're living in a pandemic, pretty much everybody at this point is going through some sort of anxiety or low mood. So normally figures would suggest like 25% of people are going through some sort of mental health problem, right? But recently polls during the pandemic, right, have suggested that this figure could have been raised to anywhere between like 50 to 80% of people now, either because of, like I said before, the boredom, or even students because of the added uncertainty and stress in the course, healthcare professionals just because of the workload and the stresses that they're going through. So it's something that's even more important now in the current climate that we're living in. And yeah, pretty much all healthcare professionals will have some form of high functioning anxiety. I guess almost in the sense, sometimes people will even complain of sort of fearing, like having a feeling of imposter syndrome as well. Like it can manifest in many ways. And although the burnout is there and it's been there for a while, there's still quite a lot of stigma about healthcare professionals saying that they're going through this, or even talking about it, because there's always that fear, like, am I going to be deemed as competent as everyone else? Are people going to see me as weak that I'm going through this? When in actual fact, everybody is going through this. It's just a matter of not trivializing it. Like, the more people that will talk about this, the more everybody will begin to recognize that it's not something that's just weird to talk about. Everybody is literally going through this. Some people have better management than others, but it's not abnormal in that sense. So what can we then do to sort of tackle this, right? So it's important to recognize that obviously that life is, if you can picture it like walking up like an incline, right? And that incline are like the struggles that you have in your life, the problems that can surface. And if somebody is going through a certain level of anxiety, low mood, depression, it's like going up this incline, but with like an added weight, right? I'm sure the gym lads out there listening will appreciate the difficulty, right? Just going over the incline with an added level of weight. So it's important to sort of implement some sort of mechanism to come over this. And I came across something called the 4 M's: mindfulness, meaningful engagement, mastery, and movement. And I think the sister talking previously also went over a lot of these as well. So by mindfulness, I mean just taking like 10 to 15 minutes out of your day to relax yourself. And this can be in any way that sort of you find relaxing. For some people, that may be through dhikr, having like a regular word to read, maybe on a daily basis, or for some people, deep breathing or other types of meditation, right? And the focus of it is essentially to be present in the moment, to sort of forget about all the other struggles that you're going through in that particular moment. Just be present in it, focus on that, forget about everything else, focus on what you're doing. And it sort of gives you that momentary sort of peace, in a sense. It can be through a conversation as well. If you're literally just talking to a person, forget about everything else, just focus on that conversation, just be present in that moment. And doing this on a regular basis, it's going to help. There's also something called progressive muscle relaxation, which I hadn't heard of before. I did a bit of research on it, but essentially it's just tensing and releasing like muscle group by muscle group in like sequence, and it's shown to bring that level of relaxation as well. So that could be something you can try if you want to. Meaningful engagement is essentially being open to being vulnerable, speaking to people without those constraints that you've either put on yourself or society puts on you. You don't have to spend too much time doing this as well, because then again there's that sort of chance that it could just turn into a rumination again. But just like 10 minutes a day, you can talk, you can text, you can even just like check in with other people and check up on other people as well. And it helps. And the key thing is giving and receiving the support, so that it's a two-way thing. And that's the best way that it would work. Mastery. By mastery, I mean finding something that you're good at and carrying on doing it. And if you're not good at anything, or you don't think you're good at anything, find something that you like, invest in it, invest your time in it, and become good at it. And it should be something that gives you some sort of pleasure and joy. The idea is that you're fully in control of this, and it's something that you enjoy it, you don't have any worries about it, and it's just going to give you that sort of that peace and happiness for that period of time that you're doing it, and it sort of achieves that level of engagement and flow that you'd be seeking in pretty much every other task but struggle to get. Finally, movement. I'm sure we've heard plenty of times how important exercise is for us. It's important to maintain regular exercise, both for cognition as well, and just general concentration and memory. I'm not going to go into the details because I'll be honest, I struggle to understand it myself, but it links to neurotrophic factors within your brain, and it'll improve you vastly. And that is normally compromised within high functioning anxiety. So if you can do regular movement exercise, it will really help to counter that and bring you back to a better level. And finally, before I go on to the A2A assessment, I just want to say that just give yourself the credit you deserve. It's easy to be very, very critical of yourself, but you've got through everything that you're still here to this day. So give yourself some sort of credit that you've gone through the struggles and you've come out to where you are so far, and you can keep achieving it. So, be proud of what you've done so far and carry on just doing it. And finally, there's also something I wanted to just touch on as well briefly. It's the A2E assessment, not the A2E assessment that a lot of us are familiar with as medics, but it's essentially a type of CBT. And the idea is that you sort of run through those thoughts in a logical way. So you think about what is the activating event, right? So what's the sort of event that you struggle with, or what triggers those unwanted responses? And then your beliefs, like what thoughts and beliefs do you have? What thoughts and beliefs that you hold, right? Then you think about just consequences, what sort of internal or external behaviors result from this belief that you have held on to, right? And then dispute, right? So challenge those beliefs. So what would happen if it wasn't like that? Like how do you think it would be in the opposite sense, right? Is that belief rational? Is that sort of insecurity? Is that sort of fear that you have? Is that rational? And then exchange it, right? So swap them around. Try acting out. Try sort of living for a short while with those sort of challenging beliefs that you've sort of come up with, and see how that will sort of help you, because you've been living with your sort of insecurities for a long time, and if it hasn't helped you this way, why not try something different? Why not try believing in yourself in a while and see how that goes? And this is something that you can look up in more detail. I'm sure me briefly touching on it doesn't really do it justice. There's loads more videos out there, so I'd definitely recommend you look into it as well. But yeah, that's all that I've got time for. It might have been a bit all over the place, but thank you very much for listening, and I hope you can all take something away from that. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair, Riaz. Thanks for that. So we'll have the second student speaker now, Marwa, if she's here.